Hello, everyone. Welcome to Material Science for Sustainability, the fifth installment of the six-part outreach webinar series organized by the Department of Material Science and Engineering at NUS. Consistently ranked among the top globally by Times Higher Education and QS, MSE at NUS has made extensive contributions and breakthroughs in research, education, and innovation, clinching numerous national and international awards today. With cutting-edge research in areas such as advanced manufacturing, bio-inspired materials, edge computing, and computational material sciences, as well as world-renowned faculty members such as Nobel laureate Prof. Sir Konstantin Novoselov, Prof. Sylvia Gradicek, and Prof. Barbaros Ozimas, it is unsurprising that MSE at NUS is one of the leading MSE departments in Asia. In addition, the recently released MOE employment survey has shown that 90% of our graduates have found permanent jobs in less than 6 months with a mean salary of 3.9K. I'm Jody, the moderator for today's webinar session. Before we begin, let me briefly introduce the Outreach webinar series. Organized in conjunction with the MSE Roadshow, this six-part webinar series aims to raise awareness and showcase the diverse roles and career opportunities available to MSE graduates. Over the course of this series, several distinguished speakers from various fields will each give a talk on the career pathways they have embarked on. For a more interactive experience, this webinar will be split up into two parts. The first being the talk by the invited speakers, followed by a Q&A session where the panel, comprising of our invited speakers and Associate Prof. Daniel Blackwood, Deputy Head for Education and Student Affairs, will answer questions posed by members of the audience. Members of the audience may submit their questions in the webinar Q&A and indicate if they would like a specific speaker to answer their question. Do remember to complete the survey when prompted at the end of this webinar. To kick off today's session, I welcome Associate Prof. Daniel Blackwood, Deputy Head for Education and Student Affairs at MSE, to give the opening speech. Prof. Blackwood, please.
Okay, thank you for coming. I'm going to give a basic introduction to the department. So we're the Department of Material Science and Engineering at NUS, which obviously, hopefully by now you would know. A few things about why you should come here. We're actually the first department in the world, or the first in the world, to have a dedicated institute on functional intelligent materials. It's a university institute, but all the professors are linked to our department. I will say a little bit more about that in a moment. As far as world rankings are concerned, we're ranked 5th in the world, so that's not 5th in Singapore, that's 5th in the whole world in terms of material science and engineering departments. And perhaps importantly, from your point of view, if you're going to be a student with us, when it comes to getting a job after you've graduated your degree, whether that's at the bachelor or the master's level, the employer reputation, we're number 1 in Singapore and indeed number 1 in Asia. So employers like our students, and that's important from your future point of view. We're also the only department in the whole of Singapore to have a Nobel Prize winner, Professor Sir Konstantin Novoselov. He joined us a little bit over a year ago, and he came to NUS because he sees us as a forward-looking department where he can further develop his ideas, and he is the founding director of this new institute. Okay, so what is material science and engineering? I'm aware that most of you, the JC, sort of know what chemical engineering, mechanical engineering is, electrical engineering, but may not be so well aware of what MSE is. Well, what we do is we take all the primary sciences, chemistry, physics, biology, and we sort of combine them all together, put in some engineering to design materials for future applications, whether that's energy storage, batteries, solar cells, biomedical devices such as stents, 2D materials, graphene, it's great for electronics, or even soft materials in robotics, the feeling of touch, right? How do you pick something up? It's easy for you to pick something up, but it's not actually very easy for a machine to know how much pressure it needs to pick something up. It needs a sensor, and it needs a material that can sense that. So if you're very interested in science, so during your JC days, if you like physics, chemistry, or biology, but you want to do something with it that in the end will matter rather than just being science for science sake, then material science and engineering is the degree for you to choose. And our employment rate has been good. This was the 2019 survey, which was published in 2020. Next month, I believe the MOE will actually produce another survey. They tend to bring it out every February. But last time, even though it was COVID, we still had over 90% of our students found employment within the first 6 months. Salaries were reasonably good as well. The mean is at $3,922. The medium, a little lower, but virtually the same, right? This is in the noise level. And our top students are getting over 4,000. Okay, so we're above average in engineering salaries if you're doing material science and engineering. This doesn't mean our top students, top CAP students, this is the top earner students. There's more to getting a good job than just exam results. Okay, it's part of your personality. Have you done the right specialization, things like that. All right. And so onto specializations. We already have 2 specializations that we've had for quite a long time, one in polymers. Polymers is a fancy way of saying plastics, but there's a lot more to it than your shopping bag. Polymers are used a lot in the biomedical industry, artificial valves, biological body replacements are mostly made out of polymers. We also have nanotechnology. For quite a long time, that's a lot to do with the electronics industry. But we're also launching 2 new specializations. One is on artificial intelligence, or related to artificial intelligence. That is being passed by the university and just needs MOE approval. So that will certainly be ready for when you join us in the summer. And the next specialization we're working on is biomedical materials, and that's been passed by most of the university, just needs Senate approval and then MOE. So when you come and join us, there'll be both biomedical material specialization, and importantly for most of this audience, we're having a specialization related to artificial intelligence. A little bit more achievement about our research side. We actually have 5 researchers that are amongst the most highly cited researchers in the world. Okay, worldwide, the citations are right. We do our research, we publish papers, and if other people find our papers useful, they will mention our papers in their own papers. So that's what a citation is. Worldwide, they list the top 6,600 of these top researchers, and in NUS there are 32, of which 5 are in MSE. So although MSE is only a relatively small department, we have maybe 30 academic staff, maybe. So that's, I don't know, maybe 10% of the faculty of engineering, and yet we've got more than 10% of the top researchers, not in the faculty, but actually in the university. So that shows how well our standard is compared to the whole of the university, and NUS is a very good university. So you'll be learning from the best. We've also just started, or the university has just launched a new research institute in functional intelligent materials, which is based on using AI to produce new materials with specific applications. Although that's at the university level, it's got very strong collaborations with MSE, because all the founding professors, as you can see from the list below, all 5 of these are all members of our department. Barbaros is our head, Costina is our Nobel Prize winner, but also Antonio and Dario and Masajic are all part of our department. So it's the world's first research institute on functional intelligent materials. It's over $200 million investment over 10 years, so that's a lot of money. And they will be employing researchers and PhD students, approximately 100. So it's 10 years, so you join us now. In 4 years' time, you will graduate with your bachelor's degree, or in 1 or 2 years' time, if it's a master's degree. And then you have a chance to do a PhD in this institute. And this one is also for admission, so I'll let you scan that if you want the QR code for undergraduate admissions. Is this one here? And if you're interested more in MSE as a whole, you can scan the code for the MSE interest group, and after you join that, you can ask any questions you like to the interest group. This includes some of our students and alumni who can give you a more direct answer than maybe the professors would. Okay, so that's my last slide. So I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Prof. Blackwood, for introducing the department. In today's webinar, we are fortunate to have with us two speakers who are no stranger to the field of sustainability. They are Assistant Professor Tan Swee Ching and Mr. Benjamin Greaves. Welcome to today's webinar session, and thank you for joining us. First up, we have Prof. Tan Swee Ching, an assistant professor in the Department of Materials Science and Engineering. Prof. Tan obtained his PhD from the University of Cambridge and works as a postdoctoral associate in the Department of Materials Science and Engineering at MIT. He's also the founder of Ultra Dry Private Limited, a spin-off company from NUS based on the invention of a super hygroscopic material. Prof. Tan, please.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Everything is good? Okay, good. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. First of all, I'd like to thank Jody for the very kind introduction. Today, I'd like to share with you some of the works that my group is working on that is capturing moisture in the air for sustainable applications. I'm going to show you how I achieved this through material science and engineering. As mentioned by Jody, I did my PhD in Cambridge, UK, and then moved on to MIT to do my postdoc. I've been staying in these temperate countries for more than 7 years. So when I returned to Singapore in 2014, I no longer get used to Singapore weather. Singapore has an average temperature of around 32 degrees Celsius in the afternoon, and a very high relative humidity, or RH, above 80% throughout the year. Many people think that a temperature of 32 degrees Celsius is considered hot in Singapore. In fact, this is not true. Why is it not true? In fact, it is the high RH that is affecting the way we perceive temperature. Let's look at this heat index table on the left. The numbers in the horizontal bar on top shows the actual temperature. The numbers in the gray vertical axis shows the RH. And the numbers in the yellow, orange, and red boxes are the perceived temperature, or feel like temperature. Let's say if the temperature is 32 degrees Celsius and the RH is 85%, it actually makes us feel like 47 degrees Celsius. This is 15 degrees Celsius higher than the actual temperature. But if we could reduce the RH to 60%, the perceived temperature will drop to 37 degrees Celsius. This will be a 10 degrees Celsius drop. Why is that so? This is because the RH is low. Sweat from our body could be evaporated instantly and therefore removing our body heat. It is the same effect when we go swimming in a hot afternoon. But when we get out of the pool, we feel cold because the water on our body starts to evaporate and therefore remove our body heat. The picture on the right is a screenshot of the weather app from my mobile on a particular day, and it shows that the temperature was 31 degrees Celsius, but it felt like 37 degrees Celsius. This is because of RH. It is affecting the way we perceive temperature. Therefore, if we could reduce the RH in Singapore to less than 60%, then we don't need to turn on our aircon anymore. What we need is just a fan and we will feel very comfortable. So how could we achieve this goal? The first thing we need are super efficient hygroscopic materials. Hygroscopic materials are basically materials that can absorb moisture from the air. Silica gel. This small little packet over here that is commonly found in food packaging is an example of hygroscopic material. However, it can only absorb 30% of its own weight with water. That means every gram of silica gel can only absorb 0.3 gram of moisture from the air. This is too little. Not only that, it also requires a high temperature of 110 degrees Celsius to release the water in order to reuse the material. The next example is calcium chloride. It can absorb 300% of its own weight with moisture. This is wonderful, but then the desorption temperature is even higher. That's 180 degrees Celsius. This explains why people do not reuse these materials. Right. So therefore, our group has developed a much higher efficient hygroscopic material, the hydrogel, which can absorb around 460% of its own weight with water. Not only that, it can be recycled at only 45 degrees Celsius, which makes it suitable for multi-cycle usage. Therefore, we make use of the hydrogel that we have developed and integrated into a dehumidifier. The dehumidifier that you see here is printed with a 3D printer. The device consists of 5 key components. The first component is the hydrogel, a coated air filter for moisture absorption. The second component is the heating panels behind the air filter for material regeneration. And the third component is a cooling panels for moisture condensation. Fourth component is a water tank for water collection. And last but not least, we need a fan right over here to suck in humid air into the system. The dry air will be released from the top as shown over here. So the dehumidifier coated with the hydrogel was used to dehumidify a 12-meter cube room. We are able to bring the RH from 75 degrees Celsius, from 75% to 58% in about 15 minutes. As you can see, this cannot be achieved with silica gel and calcium chloride. This reduction in RH would significantly reduce the fuel light temperature by 7 degrees Celsius. This is because if the ambient air is dry, sweat produced from our skin could be evaporated immediately, therefore removing our body heat. Meanwhile, the water collected from the dehumidifying system is clean and can be directly used for fish keeping and even for drinking. Commercial dehumidifiers are mostly coated with silica gel powder to absorb moisture from the air. Therefore, it is very energy intensive. The power consumption of our dehumidifier is only 200 watts, which is much lower than the commercial models in the market. This is basically because our material requires only around 50 degrees Celsius to regenerate. It is much lower than silica gel regeneration temperature. Now, let's look at another problem. During this COVID-19 pandemic, many healthcare workers are required to wear personal protective equipment, or PPE, to reduce the risk of contracting or transmitting COVID-19. The airtight nature of PPE prevents heat loss, which then leads to thermal strain on the body, resulting in an increase of skin temperature. One of the studies, which was published on Straits Times in 2020, has reported that heat stress resulting from wearing PPE could cause healthcare workers to get dizzy, headache, and thirsty. How could we make use of the dehumidification concept that I mentioned earlier to reduce heat stress of our healthcare workers? Right, who need to wear PPE for a prolonged period of time. Okay, what we need to do now is, instead of drying the air in the room, we want to create a dry microclimate within the PPE suit so that the sweat on the skin can be evaporated easily. This is a great idea, right? But there's a problem. That is, the hydrogel that I have presented earlier is like a glue. So it is difficult to use in PPE. To solve this problem, we have to develop another material that is non-sticking. We develop a rubber-like material that's shown over here. That's hygroscopic in nature as well. This rubber film can be easily attached to PPE to improve the thermal comforts for all healthcare workers. So to show the effectiveness of this rubber film on enhancing sweat evaporation, we conducted tests on a sweating mannequin to simulate the amount of sweat produced from a human being. The rubber hygroscopic film was attached to the PPE suit to absorb water vapor from sweat evaporation. As shown in the photo on the top, the film was transparent before moisture absorption and turned to opaque after taken off from the sweating mannequin. As shown in the figure on the left, without the rubber-like hygroscopic film, the RH inside the PPE increased very fast to more than 90% in about 1 hour due to the sweat evaporation from the mannequin. By attaching the rubber hygroscopic film, the RH inside the PPE could maintain less than 55% for at least 2 hours. By reducing the RH, the perceived temperature by healthcare workers drops from 57 degrees Celsius to 36 degrees Celsius. From the extremely danger to extreme caution region, therefore significantly reducing the likelihood of heat-induced illness, such as heat stroke. We have also conducted a trial test on human participants. The participant was required to wear the PPE suit for 1 hour, with and without the film. After the participant had removed the PPE, we used IR camera to map the bed temperature. As you can see here, the bed temperature is 29.7 degrees Celsius, which is around 1.8 degrees Celsius lower than the one without wearing the film. This shows that the film could achieve evaporative cooling through enhanced sweat evaporation. The next problem that I want to solve is global water crisis. The top left-hand side photo shows a girl drinking water from a muddy pond. The bottom right-hand side photo shows a group of women bringing along their children to collect water from a well. All these are indeed happening now in some parts of the world. This world map shows the geographic distribution of world population without safely managed drinking water. As you can see that almost the entire Africa contains the highest total number of people without safely managed drinking water, followed by regions in South Asia and Latin America. It is estimated that approximately 2.2 billion people without safely managed drinking water. So how could we solve this problem? One resource that most people have overlooked is our atmosphere. Our atmosphere contains about 13 trillion kiloliters of water. You know this is equivalent to how many Olympic-sized swimming pools? I want you to make a guess before I reveal the answer. Okay, I want you to think through, not just have a number in your mind. Okay, it is about 5.2 billion Olympic-sized swimming pools. This is a huge source of fresh water, which has remained relatively unexplored. If we could tap into this source, it could open up a self-sustaining source of fresh water that can potentially support billions of drinking needs and agriculture. So how can we harvest the atmospheric water? There are two important factors to consider: material and device. We need materials that are able to absorb huge amount of moisture from the air within a short period of time, and the ability to release the water at relatively low temperature. Once we have this material, we need to make use of engineering to design a system that can help to optimize the process of harvesting atmospheric water. This is what material science and engineering is all about. So we have developed a super hygroscopic aerogel in the form of a sponge. It can absorb even more than the first few generations of materials that I just presented. It has an ultra-high water outlet of 540% of its own. More importantly, the water absorbed in the sponge-like material can be easily released by placing it under natural sunlight. We have a material with excellent water absorption property. This is good, but not enough. We also need to have a system that can help us produce water 24/7. Therefore, we have developed an autonomous atmospheric water generator for continuous fresh water production. This is how our autonomous atmospheric water generator looks like. There are two chambers. One is the absorption chamber, and the other is the desorption chamber. There are two pieces of aerogels in the system which work alternatively. One will be in the absorption chamber where there's a fan below it to suck in moist air from outside, and the other will be in the desorption chamber where it will be exposed to the sun to release the water. We have a condenser below to condense the hot water vapor released from the hygroscopic material. The device can achieve continuous water capture and release cycle. The whole system is powered by solar energy. I'm going to show you a video how the system harvests water and collect water from the device. The setup was done indoor under a solar simulator, which could produce the same light intensity from the sun reaching the Earth's surface. So here is the absorption chamber. After the materials have captured the moisture from the air, they are being pushed up to the desorption chamber on the right. The light from the solar simulator will heat up the materials and cause them to release the water capture in the form of water vapor. When the water vapor touches the sides of the walls, they condense and drip down to the bottom, as you can see over here. I can see water dripping down. Okay, we have tested our device outdoor as well and measured the volume of water collected from 10:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. The total fresh water output on this typical day is calculated to be 1.64 liter per kg per day. Basically, this means that 1 kg of the material could produce 1.64 liter of water in one day. The water quality has been analyzed and all the metal ions concentrations are all within the WHO drinking water standard. This shows that the water collected is safe for drinking. Another problem that we are facing is that we are currently importing more than 90% of food. Only less than 10% is produced locally. In 2019, our government announced to increase Singapore's food self-production level to 30% by 2030. This would mean that this is going to increase our demand for water supply. Currently, most urban farms only use tap water as their water supply for the irrigation systems. Such high reliance on tap water for urban farming will certainly add stress to our limited water resources. This may increase costs of local food production as half of our water supply comes from energy-intensive treatment process. Based on our hygroscopic material, we have successfully designed a smart farm that looks like a fish tank over here. The smart farm will harbour atmospheric water at night and release the water during the day for plant irrigation. You can take a look at this video to see how the smart farm works. Okay, the tray over here contains our hygroscopic material that absorbs moisture from the air overnight. And at around 11 a.m., the covers on top will close to create a greenhouse effect. The hydrogel will be heated by the sun and water vapor will be released into the enclosed fish tank. When the water vapor touches the cold walls, it condenses and drips down to the soil to irrigate the plants. The plants that you're seeing here is kangkong. So the kangkong are grown without manual irrigation. After 20 days, we are able to cook the kangkong grown in the smart farm. NASA is developing technologies needed to send humans to Mars in 2030s. For astronauts heading to Mars, food will be a major concern. Packing enough food to eat to last the trip is impractical, so food will have to grow in self-sustaining microfarms. So right after we published the smart farm work in a scientific journal in 2020, it caught the attention of Mr. Benjamin Grieve, a US researcher who had studied crop growth in microgravity conditions and had worked with NASA on developing greenhouses for space mission. Ben was preparing to join a crew at the Hawaii Space Exploration Analog and Simulation, that is a Mars simulation facility funded by NASA, to test out our hydrogel for growing food on future space mission. Ben used our hydrogel in a small experimental greenhouses to successfully grow microgreen sunflower plants and outland cress. Mr. Benjamin Grieve will be the next speaker, and he'll share with you more about his experience on space farming and the importance of materials for future space farming as well. Another question that we would like to ask is, can we grow strawberries in Singapore? The answer is yes, if we could control the humidity. Maintaining the proper relative humidity is critical for growing strawberries. Low humidity affects calcium uptake. When conditions are too humid, it may promote the growth of mold and bacteria. Humid conditions also invite the presence of pests. So we need to maintain at least 60 to 75% RH to harvest sweet strawberries. The hygroscopic materials that my group have developed could be used in regulating the RH within a strawberry farm. So to sum up, I've shown you how we could make use of materials development and engineering solutions to solve some of the world problems. So what I have demonstrated or presented here is the invention of super hygroscopic materials that could help us improve thermal comfort, harvest water from the air for drinking and farming. So if you're passionate about chemistry, physics, and bio, and want to make an impact in the world by developing new sustainable materials, material science and engineering is definitely the right course for you. We need you, and I hope to see you in the near future.
Thank you, Prof. Tan, for the informative talk. I'm sure the audience, and myself included, are excited to see how the work you have done will create a more sustainable world for us to live in. Next up, we have Mr. Benjamin Greaves. Mr. Greaves graduated from the University of Michigan with a bachelor's degree, a minor, and a master's degree. He also interned at the NASA Kennedy Space Center and Langley Research Center, where he developed projects for extraterrestrial food production and Martian habitat designs. Dr. Greaves is now with Starlab Oasis, where he uses space systems to improve global food security and nutrition. Mr. Greaves, please.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And I want to thank the Department of Material Science and Engineering so much for allowing me to give a talk today. So let me share my screen. And so what I really hope to get out of this presentation today is just a lot of the different applications for the material science that Dr. Tan mentioned. I know he already gave a whole list of different ideas that I would like to just add on to that, if I will, in terms of the importance of space exploration. So space sustainability is such an important topic nowadays because as the launch of rockets is the cost of these launches are lowering, we have the possibility yet again to be going to the moon and onto Mars. However, in order to do that, we can't always be bringing our food with us. That starts to become very expensive as we go towards Mars. And so one different tactic that we're looking into is growing the food on location. And that, of course, is going to require some incredible new innovations in order to move forward with that possibility. And so as said, my name is Ben Greaves. I'm now with Starlab Oasis. We're a company in Abu Dhabi in the UAE. And we're really excited to be working in this space where we're the first ever research company to work on off-Earth agriculture. And I got the opportunity to work with Dr. Tan before I joined this company. And so I'm excited to talk about that today. All right, so I want to really give this presentation as an overview of addressing a challenge through 3 different projects that I worked on. So I started with this project of Sibel, which was a project that I worked on at NASA Langley, where we designed a Martian greenhouse that would be able to supply the full diet of astronauts on Mars. But we discovered a challenge whenever we did that was the importance of that dehumidifier system. Current dehumidifier systems are very mass heavy and clunky. And so I got the opportunity to work with Dr. Tan at High Seas to test a possible solution to overcome this challenge. That's one of the things that I really enjoy about space exploration is it forces you to address these challenges that once you come up with the solutions, they have solutions here on Earth that, as Dr. Tan mentioned, really allow us to help many of the different agriculture, as well as, you know, helping with the pandemic in terms of comforting people who are wearing PPE. So to get into Sibel, as you can see here, it is a Martian greenhouse that uses ice as both structure as well as radiation protection. And so this version of this thing called Ice Home would be used for a greenhouse. And so as you can see, we had a outside running track. You know, I'll talk a little bit today about the importance of plants and nature. And you know, that's something that we don't have when we go to Mars. And so to be able to grow your own food on Mars not only helps with your nutrition, as well as your sustainability, but it also allows you to be part of nature and kind of bring a little bit of Earth with you. So as you can see, we looked at a whole bunch of different plants, different crops. And one of the important things that we looked at was making sure that this was a greenhouse that could host just a whole number of different cuisines. So, you know, we hope that the first group of astronauts that go to Mars aren't all from one country or one continent. And in order to make sure that accessibility is possible for everyone, we need to make sure that starts at the dinner plate. And so we really wanted to make sure that this greenhouse could host a whole bunch of different crops for that. However, the problem that we faced, as mentioned, was dehumidifying such a large greenhouse. Traditionally uses some of these very large dehumidifier systems. As you can see, this really isn't the best packaging for launching to space. It's very heavy. It's all very centralized. So rather than kind of having some of these dehumidifier systems around your greenhouse to kind of have a little bit more equal amounts of dehumidifier levels, some of these dehumidifiers really create these little microclimates where you have some areas of your greenhouse that are very well kept and low humidity, where some you don't have as well maintained. And this also requires a lot of replacement parts. And, when you're going to the moon, when you're going to Mars, you don't have the luxury of being able to, go down to the local hardware store to buy new products. And so what we wanted to look into was a solution that allowed us to be, as the talk today is titled, sustainable, something that you would be able to quickly make changes if the problem came up. And so this was where we looked into the hydrogel solution. And so as Dr. Tan mentioned, this is an incredible invention in terms of its capacity to absorb water, as well as its low temperature needed to desorb that water. And, as he mentioned, we're able to use this water to recirculate, whether it be for drinking water, whether it be for watering the plants again. And so this was an incredibly intuitive solution. And so just a quick little talk about what this would do is that you would have this track on the ceiling that, as humidity would carry up into the air, it would be absorbed. And then as the band would rotate, it would go into the oven where the water would be collected and then put back to the system. And, this is also something that's very important on Mars, as you don't readily have water that, you can go outside. There's unfortunately not water in the atmosphere. So this is something that you need to make sure that you use the water to the best of your ability. And this goes back to, I'm here in the UAE and we're kind of in the middle of a desert here. And so some of these applications, some of these technologies have great on-Earth applications. And so we want to be the foremost example of how some of these space technologies can help here on Earth. Because, there's a lot of conversation about, why are we going to space when we have all these problems on Earth? Going to space really allows us to think about these challenges and come up with solutions that would be helping out here. So as you can see in the picture there on the bottom, I got to work with Dr. Tan's SWE lab in order to have some of this material sent out. And I'm so appreciative. It was such an incredible experience. And it also kind of gave me the experience of an astronaut in the sense that I would have to email members of the SWE lab in order to help me understand and work with the material. And that's something that, astronauts are going to have to do as well. They're going to have to work with a team, mission control here on Earth, in order to understand what they're working with and in order to troubleshoot problems. And so this was such a great experience. And I'll talk about it a little bit more here on the next slide. There we go. Okay, so high seas in general is the Hawaii Space Exploration Analog and Simulation. It is in Hawaii on the Big Island. If you can see my mouse, it's right kind of in the middle, right by a volcano. Fortunately, the volcano is not active anymore. It is very high, so we also had the feeling of low atmosphere, similar that you would have on Mars. We had a 2-week mission of 6 crew members that I'll introduce. So we had Dr. Michaela Musilova very aptly and very capably leading our team, as well as we would have each crew member bring their own science experiments with them. So it was really cool to see some of the other experiments as well. Unfortunately, mine was plants. With plants, they kind of, after you plant them, they kind of run on autopilot. So I did have a good amount of time to really enjoy the experience as well. But I also was able to work with this hydrogel. It gave me time to work with the hydrogel and monitor the environment. So here you can see the crew that we had. We had our crew systems engineer. We had me as the crew engineer, crew operations engineer, crew journalist who was able to take pictures of and document all these incredible moments that we had. As you can see, all these pictures in here were taken by Cassie Kloss. We also had the crew bioengineer who was looking at the different samples, we would take rock samples and observe if they would have some of these extremophiles that would be grown hypothetically on the moon or Mars. And so this was such a great experiment. One thing that I was able to bring as the crew engineer / botanist was a kind of some of these ingredients were able to be added to our food. And so all of the food that we had there was freeze dried. And so this is what's so important about being able to have this off-earth agriculture, is that we were able to add some of these microgreens that I grew to our diets. And that really helped with crew morale. So just to give you a little bit of the day in the life of what we were doing, you can see there in the top right, the importance of food. You know, everyone loves food and understands. You know, I was on a panel in which someone said, you know, everyone is an expert in food and we practice 3 times a day. And I really love that, because this shows that everything that we do here really allows you to have everyone be a part of the conversation, and everyone brings their own culture and their own cuisine to the table. And that's why we wanted to make sure that this greenhouse can sustain as many different cuisines as possible. We would have to do a 30-minute daily workout, as astronauts have to do on the International Space Station. We would have to conserve power and water. As you can see, that blue line is the amount of water that we had throughout the mission. And so that includes showering, that includes watering the plants, that includes drinking water. And so, you know, going back to the importance of some of these water absorption technologies, this was something that really allowed us to save water by having this water absorption hydrogel. And so, and there in the bottom right, we also had daily science reports. We had I did a nutrition study, and of course, we also did movies, as well as EVAs, extravehicular activities, where we would suit up in our astronaut suits and walk out amongst the Hawaiian volcanic area, which was very much a great simulant for Mars, what it would be like to walk around on Mars. And so this was really a great opportunity to be able to feel like what it would be like as an astronaut. So really getting into the science, the question that I brought to this was, can hydrogel serve as a sustainable alternative to the power-intensive heavy humidity control systems that I showed you before? And this was really brought in by the challenge that we had with that Sabel system. With, you know, we had all these clunky dehumidifier systems, and we wanted to find something better, because that was what was required in order to grow on Mars. You know, it wasn't just optional like we have here on Earth. You know, we can do better, but that you have to do better in order to grow plants on Mars. And so this was my very rudimentary system. I didn't have the largest budget, but I had an Arduino in which I was observing data for the humidity of the plant growth chamber. I'd put a lid on top, as well as the temperature and the CO2 level, and I want to say the pressure, were the 4 things that I would monitor. As mentioned, I grew upland cress and sunflowers. Sunflowers, while, you know, we traditionally think of them as kind of the big, beautiful flowers, when grown in their microgreen state, they're very nutrient dense, which allows us to be able to quickly harvest them and put them on meals, which really helped out a lot when you have to constantly be eating all these different freeze-dried meals. So for crop growth, there we go. So I then, you know, while my plants were growing, I had plenty of time to do a full catalog of all the different foods that we had at our astronaut analog. And so everything other than the spices and the seasonings, we had so many of those, I wasn't going to count them all. But it can vary a little bit with each mission, but this was generally a pretty good idea of what astronauts are faced with in terms of the food that they eat. So as you can see, very high in saturated fats and cholesterols and sugars, as well as sodium. And as you can see, this is from everything, all the different foods that we had. For if you were to have 1 serving of everything in the habitat, you still wouldn't get enough calcium, you still wouldn't get enough potassium, you still wouldn't get enough phosphorus. And let's see, copper was another one. And all the B vitamins, you would have to take supplements for all of these things, whether it be, you know, just a daily vitamin or, you know, your daily vitamin D pill. And so while that is an option, some of these nutrients aren't absorbed as well. if they're taken as a supplement. And they're also just not as fun. You know, we really enjoy eating food. It's something that we bring culture around, and that's just not possible if you're just, you know, taking a daily vitamin. And so this is all those B vitamins can be provided to you by vegetables. And so that's why it's so important for us to be able to grow and find ways to grow vegetables whenever we travel, because they give you such a great source of all these vitamin Bs. And so like I said, this is the target, the area that we really wanted to target was these B vitamins. And what's possible to hit some of these targets is mushrooms, spinach and kale really are superfoods. Sunflower seeds, you know, so we started growing sunflowers, but if you grow them to full maturation, you get a lot of great copper and magnesium out of them. Cauliflower, soybeans. Soybeans are also a great source of protein. You know, you can't bring animals with you. You can't bring fish with you when you're going to space. So how can we get that protein from plants? Here's just a quick illustration of, you know, the importance of food. You know, this is the first time that I saw that we were going to have coffee on this mission, and I knew that I was going to be okay because I had this coffee. And as well as cooking, you know, I think a lot of us really enjoy the process of cooking. Here is our kitchen. We had a really great, well-stocked kitchen here. And to be able to add the food that we made with that, the science experiment that I did really helped to contribute to the meals, kind of added that crunch that, you know, we really enjoy from vegetables. And so this was just such a great experience into understanding the importance of food and cooking in general. So that was at the end of 2020, I want to say. I went to Hawaii at the end of 2020. And then in October of 2021, just about 4 months ago, I got the opportunity to come here to work for Starlab Oasis. As I mentioned, we're the first company in the world devoted to this commercial in-space research. And we're really doing a lot of work in terms of some of this material science, because that's what's going to make this future possible. You know, we need to have all hands on deck in terms of I think Professor Blackwood talked about mechanical engineering, biology, and how all of that can tie into material science. You know, that soft robotics, I saw a little clip art of a little hand grabbing an apple. That's what we're going to need if we're going to have these astronauts be so busy exploring Mars, exploring the moon. Maybe it's important to have an automated system of plant growth where we have robots that actually, you know, with soft hands are able to harvest some of these crops that allow us to be able to be exploring Mars instead of having to always be working with the plants. So really excited about this opportunity, just to explain a little bit more about what we do and kind of how it overlaps with the mission that NUS has. The challenge, you know, as Dr. Tan kind of mentioned, is we have our world is slowly getting hotter and drier and more salty. Salinity is a huge problem in this area. And so we're going to have to find ways to possibly grow plants indoor. We need to have that combination of growing plants outdoors as well as indoors. And a lot of the space technology aids in developing of those indoor greenhouses. And so at the same time, as mentioned, you know, we now have the possibility of going to the moon and Mars again. And so here at Starlab Oasis, we're really looking at putting those two things together and working with those collaborations to make sure that the technology can really transfer both in space as well as on Earth. So we'd really love to have a future where, you know, and this is where we really push, you know, it's not just about space exploration, but it's also making sure that we have a nutritious food source for all of humanity on Earth. And, you know, this is just becoming harder and harder every day. And we want to make sure that those applications of space, you know, LEDs were actually pioneered by NASA because they were faced with the challenge of not being able to grow plants on the inside of the International Space Station because, you know, obviously you couldn't see the sun because you were inside. But they found that these LEDs are very efficient and LEDs become more efficient every day. And now LEDs, you know, even outside of the agricultural industry, you know, I'm using LEDs right now to as my desk lamp. They help us every day. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So we're really excited about bringing this technology down to Earth to help with life here on Earth. And so this is just kind of a sort of things that we do. We have a research center here in Abu Dhabi where we're testing out some of these materials. We're testing out how they add to the space agriculture, as well as looking at doing some of these plant growths in space. You know, the space environment is so unique in the sense of its radiation profile is always evolving. It's always different. Do you have a solar flare? Do you not? You also have microgravity, and you know there's a lot of vaccine development in space because microgravity, and this is still something we don't fully understand, but it allows biology to happen just a little bit faster. Some of these processes happen a little bit faster, and so we're really excited about that application for plant breeding, because you know we're going to have to need to make sure that a lot of these plants and biology work a little bit better in terms of mitigating some of this climate change. So just a quick video about our partner company, our parent company, NanoRacks and Voyager are working with Lockheed Martin to build a space station.
Industries in space may sound incredible, but we who are working toward them know that most of the building blocks are already in place.
It's going to be a renaissance of in-space capability. So it really is partnering the A-team with the A-team.
It must be possible because all these people share with me that it is possible.
So I know I'm coming kind of towards the end of my time, so I'm going to kind of jump to the summary page, but we're so excited for Starlab to go up in 2027. It's going to help replace some of the capabilities of the International Space Station that is looking to be decommissioned by 2030. And so we're going to make sure that we have Starlab Oasis is going to be working on Starlab to have all this off-Earth farming. And so just to summarize my slides here, you know, space exploration is very volume and mass intensive. And so some of these materials will really allow us to reduce that volume, reduce that mass. And a lot of these technologies, as mentioned, a lot of them can be used for on-Earth systems like vertical farming, hydroponic trays, root and seed mats, radiation protection, lighting systems, food packaging. We need to make sure that those are all sustainable ventures. And that is only made possible by these investments in material science. Thank you so much for your time today, and looking forward to taking some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Grease. I'm sure our audience are inspired by your research and are excited to see how this can improve global food security. We have now come to the end of today's webinar session. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to the panelists for taking time out of their busy schedule to attend today's session. Thank you for making today's webinar a success. To the audience, we hope that today's session has been fruitful for you, and we look forward to seeing you in the upcoming session on alumni sharing to be held on the 2nd of March. Do scan the QR code in the slide to sign up. If you have any questions pertaining to admissions, you may connect with our admission advisor from this QR code. With that, we have come to the end of this webinar. Thank you everyone for your participation today.
Hey, thank you. Bye then all.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.